Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Pretty Chill Podcast, the PCP.
I love it.
Today, I got a very, very special guest in studio. It's my good friend, Jason Prall, in the house. Jason and I go back 25 years or so.
It's about maybe 23.
Maybe 23. And
that feels right.
So when I was kind of thinking about what to talk about today, which we have a lot of ground to cover, I was looking at the friendship, and it's like, if we split it in half, it's like the first half we were knucklehead, not party boys, but kind of
sports,
partying, what you do in your 20s.
Pretty standard.
And then, the second half to present day is what we're doing now, obviously, and all these things. So I wanted to dive into the second half, but I also was just like, what's there with that first half? Because Jason and I had like this incredible group of friends that now that we're in our 40s and looking around, it's just like, that was a pretty special group.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what do you think, like when you think of that group, which it's still going? In fact, I think 16 or 20 of them just went on a golfing trip together.
Yeah.
Like, this group is still together. Like, what do you remember about like that time when you and I first met and like our group of friends, and what made that group so magnetic and special?
Well, what was weird for me was, I had my own group of friends from kind of high school era. And then when I met you guys, it was really through playing college football, one connection there. And then because I was, pretty good baseball player, got recruited for the softball team. And it was just through that for me, it branched out, right? So we had a bunch of guys from one area of Washington State, another group from another area. So it was kind of these, for me, it was these disparate groups, right? And it was just cool to be kind of like accepted into that. And it just started with kind of sports.
It's so funny.
A lot of partying.
It's so funny to hear. I got recruited for the softball team. And when he's talking softball team, he's talking about like the beer league,
old man softball.
And even that, like, we were young, like a lot of us in the prime of our physical peak.
We were easily the youngest team, right?
But who were we playing against?
Yeah,
and they just,
totally.
It's these guys that are in their 40s and 50s drinking beers, and they're just made for that softball.
But we were so competitive. But for me, that was cool, right? It was like, I got to see this group from Forks, this group from Bellingham, and then kind of these random guys from Eastern Washington. The fact that everybody was pretty friendly with one another, right? Like there was, of course, you had special kind of pairings and people that were, really good friends, but everybody liked each other, And so it was just this big group. And so to be a part of that, being the kind of the only kid, like a little bit of a lone wolf in that group, but also to feel like it was cohesive was pretty cool.
Yeah, we were the group at the bar that we were just magnetic.
Yeah.
And
everybody wanted to come hang out with us.
Everybody wanted to come hang out with us. It was, that big roaring laugh, and everyone's like, who are these guys? I want to be there. And never causing problems. No one fought.
Not never, but mostly not.
Yeah. A few Red Bull vodkas or something deep. You never know what's going to happen. But like, I don't remember any like fights or
no, there was really
like
none of that. Not a lot of troublemaking, but even the staff, right? Like we were friends with most of the staff that we get to know, and even if we were a little bit rowdy, they still kind of liked us.
Yeah, that's true. So that was the beginning days, and we had we're still really good friends with a lot of these guys, and some of us have migrated from Washington down here to San Diego. And
well, that was it too. There was always these like groups that we'd add on, right? Like, and there was kind of a core, you could say a core group, and then there'd be these other groups that would kind of glob on and become a part of whatever this was, and it would, and yeah, it was fascinating. It was a really cool time. Wish we did a little bit less drinking, to be honest. But it was a big part of like our fun. But yeah, that was a really cool period of probably 10 years that we were really, a big group of friends that were pretty connected.
Yeah. So as we kind of, let's call it, grew up and matured and got the big boy jobs and all these things, going into our second half of our friendship. I remember like at that time, this is when you started getting into, I remember like, I feel like you're the first person that explained what like organic food was.
Well, I was the weird guy, right?
You're the weird guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was before organic was, I guess, more accepted in the mainstream.
Yeah.
Right. So I was kind of growing some food at my house and we got a lot of friends that like to razz each other. Right. So I would get it all the time. I'd get razzed for, is it organic? Which I thought it was funny. It didn't really bother me, but it was definitely a very interesting thing to watch, being kind of the weird guy, eating organic all the time and worrying about gluten and these things that were kind of starting to bubble up into the surface, to now it's just kind of, it's so normal that, it's not even discussed anymore, right? It's just kind of part of everyday life for most people.
Yeah. I think a lot of those early, like when you were growing your own food and all these things, you were definitely the weird guy. Like you were out there. And
I was pushing it too, right? So it was like a new thing for me. I kind of waded into it. And then, whenever you discover something, you're into something, you tend to want to share it, right? And so there's definitely some of that, like pushing a little bit of like, hey, you got to do this. Look at this, make sure you do that. So there's a little bit of that energy involved. And there was some resistance, right? For most people, just get away, stop, enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Give me the cheese, give me the juicy burger.
Yeah.
Like,
which I still, definitely partook in all that stuff, but
yeah, I'll never forget this time you were, I think it was the first time you were like serious about going gluten-free or something like this, right? Maybe you're like, I'm gluten-free now, and you wouldn't eat the pizza. And
I go through these phases. I don't even know what this is, but probably.
But this is like I've never heard of anybody. This is a really weird thing for me to see somebody doing, because we were like kind of on the tail end of our like social being out and all the things.
Slowing down a
little bit. And I remember like, I think we were out for, happy hour or something, and you and me and a few other friends. And I was like, what's the hardest part about this? And you're just like, I just want to drink a beer. And you're like so sad about it. And it's not like you're like a huge beer drinker, but just a sunny day, the beer just...
There's times where like there's nothing better than a beer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, man. So as you started to be, let's call it out there. Like, and by out there, I mean eating organic food and all these things. You really found a calling for this. Like I know you had some health stuff, and you weren't just like loving your job. So like in that time, did you say like, I want to do this for myself, or were you like, well, maybe I can kind of share this info with the world? Like, where were you at mentally in that time?
Yeah, for me, I was kind of, I would say, forced into this, right? Due to some of my health issues, I had chronic joint pain since I was 13. I had, some skin stuff pop up in my 20s. And so that really forced me to kind of figure out what was going on. And then basically as I researched, and back then, this was before social media really was a thing. So there was like chat rooms and like, weird spaces to like hear other people's stories and learn from other people. That's when I kind of discovered to be honest, a lot of the deception that's out there in the health world, in the financial world, in the, government world, all these things, right? And all the corruption that is just now starting to, I think, become a little bit more mainstream. And even still, I think COVID woke a lot of people up. But all of that type of stuff I was digging into in 2008, 2007, 2009, kind of in that area. So I was uncovering all of this stuff. And for me, there was such a level, because it's like you get red pilled, right? You uncover it can be one little lie. It can be big, but it can be little too. And once you discover this lie, and then that lie has tentacles, and you start realizing, oh my gosh, this is corrupt, fraudulent. This is corrupt and fraudulent. So for me, I just started connecting dots, and this is really what I do. This is kind of like an innate part of my gifts, I think. It's putting together puzzles. It's I was engineer by trade, but the only reason I got into that field was because I'm good at puzzles. I'm good at math. I'm good at finding out answers, right? So it was really the discernment and the curiosity of all this stuff and how it was all linked together, right? So the pharmaceutical side, the finance side, the government side, food, chemical companies, right? Like all of that stuff, right? And I just realized, oh my God, this whole thing is an absolute disaster. And, the conspiracy kind of side starts to take over. But ultimately for me, it was kind of a dark night of the soul. I was depressed at what I was uncovering. And I knew it was true because some of the things that were practical, right? It wasn't just like me digging into the deep web, finding all this nonsense. It was, I know this to be true because my practical experience has shown it to be true. And it directly contradicts the mainstream sort of views, right? So that's how I uncovered a lot of these lies, because it was practical. And so once you get underneath the hood, you start realizing it's all just this big mess. And so for me, that's what it was. And I think some people had questions around health, just here and there. And they, I think, eventually started asking me. So I'd share what I thought. And so it was just through enough people asking me that I thought, okay, I have value here. I can provide a value and a service here. But what made me shift from kind of being an engineer into a new field that I wanted to go explore was the fact that I knew at that point that this was how to get people out. In other words, I need to get people out of the matrix. They're stuck in the pharmaceutical world, in the insurance model, in this health disaster area that they're not going to get out of, which is where I was, right? So you have these health issues, and the solutions that you've been given are in the insurance world, in the pharmaceutical world, copays and surgeries and drugs and all this stuff. And you can't solve the problem from that model. So the only way to help people is to get them out of the model. So how do you get them out of the model? Well, you have to teach them to be self-sufficient. You got to teach them about what good diet is, what real food is, what pharmaceuticals do, how to use nutraceuticals, how to use herbs, what creates health, what disease is, right? And so for me, it was, I recognized that's the solution. I can, there's a lot of people out there that kind of die on a hill, screaming about the current system and its flaws, and that's great. But if you don't have a solution, if you have nowhere to take people, then you have a limited effect. And so for me, that became my sort of North Star. I realized I kind of know some stuff. I don't know everything. I've got a lot more to learn, but I have a good sense. People are asking me questions already, and I'm providing a little bit of value there. And I really want to help people get out of this thing, right? Which is a complete disaster. And it's getting better, but we're on track to bankrupt the nation just through healthcare costs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I'm just thinking of those early day, because I always say that the most dangerous place in the world is YouTube comment section.
Totally.
So
and most entertaining.
Yeah. But I'm like, as you're talking, I was just like, man, I bet you there's some pretty wild comments back then. But now it's like, actually, maybe those weren't very wild. Maybe it was like the first people speaking up. And 20 years later, they're just like, oh, these folks that seems very odd, they're actually starting to make sense now.
Well, you get it. A perfect example of this that's, I think, spotlighted right now is Bobby Kennedy, right? And people like to throw jabs at him for his stance on vaccines, right? Which he's actually made very clear, and people distort what he actually says. But it's a perfect example of somebody that's rational, that takes a look at the science and speaks about the potential dangers of vaccines, the fact that they're not being studied and tested in the proper way, and the limited effectiveness of them, right? So there's sort of three components there that we need to look more into. And so that's been his stance. It's like, hey, we need to look more into this. We can't just keep doing what we're doing, right? And yet people have this view of what his stance is, right? And they think he's crazy and he's a nut. And the reality is very practical. He's very logical, right? And so this has kind of been the case. It's still the case in a big way, but people are waking up. I'm more excited now than ever. Like, I can't believe, in some sense, it feels like it's taken forever since I kind of woke up to the core of this underbelly. But in some sense, it feels like it's happened so fast that people are waking up. And again, I think a lot of it had to do with COVID and the policies that happened there. People really started to question. And to me, that's the big thing. So, when I got into this, it wasn't the fact that I knew things. It was the fact that it's not the fact that I knew the truth. It's the fact that I knew that there were lies.
Yeah.
So to me, that was the biggest piece. And that's what I hope people continue to question is like, there's a lot of lies out there. There's a lot of deception and corruption. And so if you can uncover that, if you can just look into it, even without the full answers, right? That's okay. Then at least you know you're being lied to. And to me, that's where it all began. So I looked and saw all these lies and this deception and corruption. And then from there, you're kind of out in the wilderness. It's like I was lost in space, and you start to like pick up these little truths, but even then you don't really know what's true yet. You can have a sense, right? We have an intuition. We have an ability to sense truth even without fully recognizing it. But I had to put things into practice, and I had to test them on myself. And then of course, becoming a health practitioner, that was really where I cut my teeth and got to test what I thought to be true with other people. Not that they were an experiment, but I was giving them health advice. And sometimes it would prove true, and sometimes it wouldn't prove effective. And then I have to figure, okay, why isn't it effective here? What are the nuances? Mm-hmm. And so you continue to refine, continue to figure out nuance. And that's kind of a long road, I would say. But ultimately, that's where you end up, is you're on your own figuring out what's real, what's not.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge, is like how to put some of these other things in practice. Like, I try to keep up on all the things as best I can. And it's just like, you got this one person saying, this is 100% truth. I'd bet my life, no doubt about it. And I'm like, oh, this feels good. Okay, great. Yeah, I'm going to move forward with this. 20 minutes later, somebody on the complete opposite, like, this is the truth, 100% sure, bet my life on it. And you're just like, wait a minute, like someone is like loudly lying or whatever it is.
And usually what I find is that there's context, right? So you see this a lot in the health world and the diet world, right? Yeah. Where you got somebody that's really adamant about a raw vegan diet, right? And then just to take the extremes, then on the other side, you have somebody really adamant that a carnivore diet is the solution. It's like, okay, well, how can both of these things be true, right? I firmly believe that they both believe what they're saying and that there is truth in both. And so for me, what I've recognized, and I'll just stay on the diet side here, is that given an instance so in other words, for this person, in that person's context, that diet may be effective for them for a period of time, right? So we have individual person, a unique person. We have unique circumstance of that person. So what disease state, what condition, what imbalances, what are they suffering from, right? That might prove that this is useful for them. And then how long? What's the duration? Right? So those are three various contexts that may change for somebody, right? And so that's the nuance that gets lost, which is really what eventually led me to, studying things like Ayurveda. In Chinese medicine too, I don't know as much about Chinese medicine, but Ayurveda provides these contextual frameworks for when to do this, how to do this, why it might work and why it might not work, and based on your constitution and your current situations, right? So to me, that's where it starts to get interesting, and why you as an individual might be really confused listening to other people. And again, we just talked about diet, but this is for everything, right? And so it's like the way I kind of handle this stuff is like, if you're really listening to this, holding it very lightly. Something somebody's saying probably has a grain of truth, an element of truth for them. Can that apply to me? If so, how much, when, in what contexts, right? We say that exercise is good. Okay, well, if you're exercising, let's say high intensity interval training, okay, really good for boosting testosterone, fat loss, lots of good things, right? Okay, but if we're doing high intensity interval training at 3 a.m, 2 a.m, wrong time, not a good idea. If you do it with a 104-year-old person, which we've met a few of those. Mm-hmm. Probably not a good idea, right? Mm-hmm. So the context is really, really critical. Mm-hmm. And so if you really start to understand that and apply that across the board with everything that you do, is this food good? Well, maybe. Depends on when you eat it, how much you eat. Did you eat something else with it, right? What's the state of your body? What is your unique constitution? Then we can start to get an understanding of what the answer might be. And so so when we frame it like this, it can sound really overwhelming for a lot of people. But there are general rules, and there's nature that guides us in this process, right? So this is where, again, Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, a lot of these indigenous cultures have figured out nature will show us. if we just follow the rhythms and the understanding of what nature is showing us, then we can learn so much quicker.
Yeah. And that reminds me of, we have a mutual friend, Elise Parker, who she was at one point, a very popular vegan vlogger on YouTube.
Yep.
Had, I think, 1 million followers or whatever. And this was her whole thing. And then I'm blanking on the reason, but she maybe, I think, wanted to just try something. And she's like, hey, I'm switching to carnivore. And like, I'll have her on the pod one of these days, but just the hate and the backlash that she got, because totally. I think folks, they just make this their identity as well. So
it cuts to something really, really deep in people, that is fairly threatening, right? Because if it's not only slightly different, it's just the opposite of what she's been, teaching for a while. And so 100% it can become an identity. We can wrap ourselves up in it. And if there's something that's true, that's what she's saying now, which is that this carnivore or other style of eating is healthy, then that completely throws everything that somebody thinks they know out. And then they have to create a new model of reality. Right. So that can be very threatening for people and very confusing. Right. And it's like, how do you navigate the world from there? But it's also why, again, I hold things lightly. And if you do that, then you're more flexible. You have more degrees of freedom. You're also not, you open yourself up to the fact that you can be wrong and it doesn't bother you. Not as much anyway.
Yeah. And in this time where you're kind of like going for it and studying all the things, like obviously we were friends and I was doing my own thing, and I had this interest in filmmaking. I shot a documentary, and I kind of want to get into the Human Longevity Project, which is a docuseries that Jason and I produced. Just the two of us, didn't know what we were doing, but it actually,
we in a way we knew exactly what we were doing. But like most people that either start a business or wander into a new thing, you don't realize how much the kind of work it is, I think.
Yeah,
like
totally. And I think, Jason's spoken about the project probably a zillion times on podcasts, but I think it'd be fun to just like kind of have a little peek behind the scenes of how we made this docuseries and how it was birthed. And, you came to me, what do you remember from the early origins of it?
I think what was fascinating for me was, so I was in this period of my business as a health practitioner, and I was seeing, dozens and dozens of clients. And what I realized in my practice was that no matter what imbalance or disease somebody came to me with, whether it was cancer, autoimmune conditions, some kind of syndrome, gut issues, hormonal imbalances, doesn't matter. Any of these symptoms that were walking into my door, sure, there were tests we could run, organic acids tests, stool tests, various hormone tests, all these things that we can look and get a picture of of what's going on and what we can do. But before all that, just doing an intake and assessment, I would ask people kind of what was their life like, right? And it was very clear to me that I needed to take actions before we were running tests. In other words, there's people that just weren't living in accordance with the principles of health. And this goes beyond diet and exercise. So, I kept doing that for every person. So basically what ended up happening was I was teaching every single person the same thing, no matter what came through my door. And so for me, that made me realize, instead of working with people one-on-one and teaching them the same things over and over and over again, I wanted to reach a lot of people, right? And there was a sort of you could say a marketing and sales model that I became aware of, which was these docuseries. And I thought, okay, I can do that. That makes sense to me. And so for me, it made sense in terms of transitioning my business into becoming more of an education platform. And then I just thought it was, as I look back, it's so fascinating because you kind of just did this random thing one day with your film stuff. Like you just decided to become a photographer out of nowhere, learned how to be a photographer on your own through YouTube videos and practicing and these type of things. And then decided to do a film on your own, which I don't know many people that do a feature length film internationally, like film, right, with one of our friends.
Yeah.
So that was your prep work. So it was because you did all this legwork and made basically no money off of that.
No, negative for sure.
Yeah. But you gained a ton of experience, right?
Yeah.
Like, so you learned how not to film. You learned how to film, to some degree, right? And you got enough of an understanding of this stuff. So the fact that you had that, and I had my health practice. So at one point we were on a path, you and I were on our individual paths, and then we decided to deviate, me from engineering into health, and you from, what were you doing before that? I don't even remember.
Yeah, I worked for the software company. I was doing some implementation.
While you were doing filming stuff, right? Yeah. So the fact that you we did these things on our own, and then we came together, right? And I was like, hey, I got this idea. We can do this film. It involves travel to some of the coolest places on the planet. I know exactly what to do on the health side of I know how to create this message. We just need to film this, and like this can be a thing. And I don't know how I got you to say yes, because you had, the amount of time that it took and we had no budget.
Yeah.
We had to raise money, right? I think we raised like $8,000 off of Kickstarter or whatever.
Yeah. That's how it's, yeah. If I remember, I mean, my first documentary with my previous job, it was like this just very unique situation where I was traveling 3 weeks a month. And then and that's the only time I was working.
Yeah, you had time off.
So I had, usually a week and a half off.
Yeah.
So in that week and a half off, that's when I was working like psychotically on other projects. That first documentary, I was able to like travel to Europe in between.
That's right. Yeah.
So as you were like laying this out, I was like, oh, maybe
you had time. I was like, hey, come do this with me in your spare time.
Yeah. But
and this could be a thing that could make, a good amount of money, because
right.
I know how to distribute this. And that's always the key with film, right? It's like, how many good ideas do people have with film, but the challenge is always, can you recoup your costs and or hopefully make money or turn this into a business of some kind?
Yeah.
Right.
So,
beyond just the art side of the equation.
Right. So the more we kind of outlined the project and took it more serious, it became obvious that there was no way I was going to be able to keep my job, because these travels were going to require.
Well, first we went to Costa Rica, right? So I remember we filmed just a trailer for what we were going to create.
Yep.
And basically used that. We went to Costa Rica first. Did we raise the money first? So we raised money first. We raised like $8,000 off of just the idea and a Kickstarter, right? And that allowed us to go to Costa Rica.
Yeah,
that's what happened. And then so that $8,000 was enough money for you and me to travel to Costa Rica for 10 days, film, and get what we needed to get. That became enough for us to go to some investors. I think we raised like $70,000. Like, it wasn't a ton, but we raised enough, maybe $80,000.
And the other key component of that is, once we raised, I think $8,000 or something on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Not a lot of money. Grateful for whoever chipped in.
No.
However, at that time I was like, you know what? That's enough money for me to quit my job and just see what happens. I left my job to take
wild.
A chance on this. So I remember my last day of work was March 31st. And I want to say like April 3rd, we were flying to Costa Rica or something like that.
Is that you quit before Costa Rica?
Yeah.
Wow.
I quit, and then you were down in Santa Monica at that time. And I just brought all my camera gear that I had, and we just got started.
Yeah. And I remember, we didn't even have all the pieces that we needed to execute the distribution side, the sales side, but that ended up coming later.
Well, we did as we were trying to figure out, this would be probably the year before is when we kind of did a little retreat to figure out what we had. We started shooting a couple interviews.
Was that way before in Vermont?
That was the year before. So we were kind of just
vision. We
were just like back and forth, like, how do we do this? You were like pumped, ready to go. I was like,
because I knew the model.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a ton of capital to put in, right? Neither of us did, but I knew the model, and I knew if we could execute this, I knew the content and would sell. Like, I knew that and it would be unique enough, and a little bit more special, because the distribution model itself was pretty robust.
Yeah. And we did something at that time. I don't even think we knew what we were doing, but I would suggest this to anybody that just like really needs to hone in and focus. Is we just did a creative retreat. We went to Vermont.
Yeah. It was one day
or something. And maybe two. we rented this awesome Airbnb and we just like mapped it out, and we had a poster board, and like, I'm such an outline guy.
I need to visualize it.
I like a wide net, and then
Yep.
let's just bring it in. And we were looking at it. And at that time it was one documentary. It was going to be a 90-minute film. Here's the beginning, here's the middle, here's the end. And we were like looking at each other like, yeah, this is it. And then as we started going, it was just like, there's no way we're gonna be able to fit all this in a 90-minute film. So why don't you, like, what was the premise of the project? Like, if you can remember, what was the evolution of, like, what did you want to film, and what points did you want to hit? And then, like, what did we end up doing?
Yeah. So, for me, the message that I wanted to get across from a health perspective was all of the lifestyle factors that would allow somebody to be healthy. Right. And we use the blue zones as a template for that. Right. We didn't need that. It's just that became an entertaining way to express these ideas. Right. And so, there's a challenge with that, because a lot of the blue zone work that had been done before by Dan Buettner and Michelle Poulin was the demographer in National Geographic.
So if anybody doesn't know, these blue zones they're areas around the world that have the highest populations of centenarians, people over 100.
Yeah, and they're like statistically significant, right? So Michelle Poulin basically found the first blue zone and said, "Hey, what's going on here? There's something happening here in this region of the world where there's people making it to 100 at an extraordinary rate." Like, what, and it was definable. So the key characteristic of the blue zone was making it to 100 at a high rate, definable area, right, in characteristics. And so Sardinia, a specific mountainous area of Sardinia, Ikaria, Greece, right, Okinawa, and then the peninsula in Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica. And so those areas became useful to communicate the message. It's not like we went to study them per se, right? For me, it was never about going to study them. To some degree, that work had been done. I wouldn't say it was great work. I mean, it was very interesting. What they did was profound, and I'm so glad they did it, because it really raised awareness around some things. But their conclusions weren't, in my opinion, all that great. So it was never really about studying them. It was about using the messages that they can convey to tell a story about what's going on in the West, because there was key components, right? The original Blue Zone work had some good qualities, but it was severely lacking in useful things for people in the West, right? So in other words, I think they came up with like 8 or 9 different things that if you do these things, then, this is what all the Blue Zones had in common, right? And they were okay, but it goes beyond that, right? And so what I wanted to do was highlight some of those things, but go deeper and explain why they actually work. But then the counter to that is, what are we doing in the West that is harming our health that they never had to even consider, right? When you and when we go to I go to a healthy organic grocery store here in San Diego, it's good. It's definitely better than the conventional stores, but I still have to say no to 80%, 90% of the food in that store, right? The people in Ikaria, Greece never had to deal with saying no to processed foods. It was all organic. It was all grown around them. They didn't have to make a decision. The amount of choices that we have here is paralyzing, and the foods run counter. Like, these foods that are in these stores are designed to attract us, right? The marketing is good, the taste, the profiles, the amount of crunch, the salty and the sweet, like they're designed to get us to eat them, right? And so we have to actively say no. So that was one example, right? Screens and lights and indoors stuff, they never had to deal with that. Right? They never had to worry about how much gym time am I getting? Am I going to my yoga class? Am I doing Zumba? Like, they never had to, they just worked all the time. Right? So they lived a completely different reality. So I wanted to highlight that too, that we need to understand the context in which they were raised. 1945, Ikaria, Greece did not have electricity. So imagine your life is basically camping. Like, you've got some carbide, oil, gas, lights, and these type of things, but Otherwise, there's no electricity, there's no lamps, there's no refrigeration, there's no automobiles. So imagine living that life. And so if you can at least try to put yourself in that perspective, what kind of foods are you eating? Well, you're not eating anything that's being stored in a refrigerator or freezer, right? So that changes the game, right? You no longer have the luxury to say I'm raw vegan or I'm carnivore. You need to eat food. You need sustenance. You need carbohydrates. You need proteins. You need fats. You need whatever is going to sustain you in the area that you are in, specifically that your ancestors would have passed down the knowledge, right? So there's ancestral wisdom and cultural wisdom. Yeah. So this is I really wanted people to understand that the reason that these people make it to 100 is because of the way that they grew up and the way that they lived, not what they're doing today at 95 years old necessarily.
Right. And I think when we started the project, like you had mapped out, you wrote the whole thing. So you had mapped out what these things
like the
are,
ideas,
the ideas and kind of like what you're expecting to find over there.
Yeah.
I felt like, and we traveled, like we went to all these blue zones. It was just me and Jason, like lugging gear around.
Pretty wild.
We can do a whole podcast on just like how this production happened. It's like, it's wild. But I feel like when we got to these places, this is when it was, we started saying, like the electricity factor and just how they lived.
Well, you get to see it.
Exactly.
Right. Like I remember in Costa Rica is probably one of the more eye-opening places, just because it was, I think, the first, and energetically you got to get a sense for this. Right. So when we were out on, what was her name? Christina's farm, and it was kind of like the standard homestead, right? They had some cows, they had pigs, they had chickens, right? And while most people didn't have cows, right? 50, 60, 70 years ago in these rural villages, a lot of people had chickens or pigs and gardens, right? And then when you understand, when you again, put yourself into that context with no electricity and you're there and you see it and you go, oh yeah, I get it now. I get why people would have chickens. I get why people, and this is the case for a lot of people still in the United States and various other places that live in rural areas. It makes sense, right? Why would you have a pig? Because it doesn't take up a lot of space. They're easy to contain, right? They are a food source, right? So at some point you can slaughter the pig, right? For food. What do you feed the pig? Well, you feed it garden scraps and it eats tons of different things. And it eats avocados, right? They used to feed them avocados in Costa Rica because they had too many avocados everywhere. But so you can feed it everything around you. You don't have to buy special feed for it.
Right.
So a pig makes a lot of sense if you're trying to nourish a family, right? Pigs have other pigs, right? Chicken, same thing. So this becomes a regenerative food source, right? They also shit. And then now you have fertilizer for your garden. So it all makes sense in the context of providing your own food source. So it's not like they're living like hunter-gatherers, but it's also not like they're just growing kale and lettuce and eating raw vegan, right? And the dietary frameworks, they lose their context when you go to these places. They ate corn because their ancestors ate corn and because it makes sense for where it's grown and it nourishes them. They eat rice same way, beans same way, some vegetables, lots of fruits, right? So like their dietary framework was dictated by their ancestors and what was passed down and what their local environment provides. You don't argue with nature. Like that's the thing, right? We live in such a different environment now where we get food from all over the world. We have refrigeration. We have a distribution system. We have abundance beyond belief. So we can argue. This is bad. This is bad. This is good. Don't eat that way. I eat this way. Like we have so much luxury to make these arguments and to debate this stuff. And I think it's good. We should have those. And there's an element of practicality when it comes to these blue zones. So that said, can we look at a blue zone Costa Rican diet and say like that is the diet that leads to longevity? Not necessarily, right? Again, it's all contextual. So, but the other part of being in Costa Rica, I think that really was eye-opening was the fact that we were there working 10 days, right? It's kind of stressful because it's not like there's a list of 100-year-olds and we just went down a list and emailed them, right? We had to like find somebody who spoke English and Spanish.
Step one.
right? Step one, make sure we get that guy. Right? That's a really important person who's willing to work with us and just knock on doors, essentially, right? Because we're in these small villages, knocking on doors. Do you know somebody that's 100 years old? We're filming a project, right? And then we had to rely on that. So we had compressed time trying to get this footage, lugging all this stuff around in places that don't have road street names. There's no maps. It's like, it was wild, right? And despite all that, the energy was relaxed. It was calm.
Yeah.
We weren't super stressed. In fact, I remember specifically, I will never forget this. We're on the porch of our Airbnb with one of our friends was there too. And there was like an iguana climbing in a tree right next to us. And it was in the morning. Cows walked by into the field next to us. And I think I said, or somebody said, yeah, we better get going. It's the day's kind of getting away from us here. And I think we looked at the clock and it was like 7:30 or something,
Yeah.
But it felt like we'd been sitting there BSing for a while and we were kind of getting behind. So the pacing of the entire reality was different.
Yeah.
And that made a huge impact on me because when we landed back in the Houston airport, I instantly felt my nervous system just like go into high gear and we're sending a line. It's not like there's nothing going on in the Houston airport. We were just waiting for our bags or waiting to go through customs. But I felt the nervous energy and it wasn't me, it was the environment. And so that was a huge, huge lesson that I think for me, I could only realize when I got there. And I've been on vacation, I've traveled around the world, but I'd never been in a compressed work, with a lot of work and still not felt the anxiety, the stress that normally might come with that.
Yeah, you might feel that in like Hawaii or something. Because this is a very, I would call it an important moment in my life, this exact one that you're talking about, because there was also a couple days that we got up, we brought a little coffee thing and made our own coffee and just took it easy. I think we were reading books in the morning. And then we would just venture out and we would work a full day, like hard day of like all these things that you described of like, we're not just driving straight to a place to do it. Like we have to like figure out how to get to these places and
we got to set up and it's it's a process.
All the things. And we would do that and we'd come back and it'd be like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And we're just like, I guess I'll take a nap in the hammock.
Should we go to the beach or what?
I was so confused and I've never really seen that anywhere else except for maybe Hawaii. But
I think part of it was the fact that we were in small villages, right? So to get from A to B didn't take you half an hour dealing with traffic. Like things just happened more efficiently in a way. But I think that the analogy that I give is, if you're driving down a dirt road, like a rural road at 10 miles an hour, that makes sense, or 15 miles an hour. You go 60 down that dirt road, like you're out of control. But on the other side of it, if you're driving on the highway at 70 miles an hour, that makes sense because everybody else is going 70. You try to drive 10 or 15 like you would on a dirt road, absolute disaster. So your system, your nervous system, your body, your whole energy, generally tends to match the environment because that's what's required to sort of stay safe and to stay safe and to effectively get through the day. Now there's techniques and tools and strategies we can do to sort of, counter that. But generally speaking, that's what's required in our Western world is for us to keep up with it because everybody else is going at 100 miles an hour, right? I got people emailing me, texting me, calling me, expecting things. There's demands on me and my time. And unless I set up a boundary or barrier around that, my automatic sort of program is going to be running at that, right?
So we completed this production. It ended up being 9 episodes, 13 hours. We interviewed over 100 people,
which is crazy.
Crazy. I would define it as success. I'd say it was a success.
It was a massive success.
It was great.
Yeah.
Like looking back, is there anything we missed? Anything that you wish, I wish we would have talked about this, or maybe even something I wish we wouldn't have talked about this? Anything now that you're kind of looking back on? Or?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot of stuff. I think I wish like if I could plug some more content in there, it would be like more regenerative medicine stuff. But back then that was still very early. The thing is when it comes to health and various modalities and techniques and tools and there's endless things that you can talk about, right? And so I think for us, it was more about what are the foundational things that people need to be aware of, so that they can navigate their health, right? And so I think we kind of covered it all, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so too. We were excited to start a second project, which we kind of started writing immediately, I'd say. And this is like going to be hard to even talk about because we were in production and
we were halfway through this thing.
Well, here's the funny thing. I think we still are. Like
Yeah,
I've been like trying to trick myself into saying, well, it's still going to happen.
We can still open it back up. No question.
Yeah. We kind of got screwed by COVID a bit with the timing. But what was our next project and how did you birth that and what was that looking like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of the Human Longevity Project, I'd say, the reason it actually kind of came into fruition was due to sort of my exploration and eventually your exploration of plant medicines, things like ayahuasca, psilocybin. And that was a big part of, I think, the willingness to take on a project of that size in the state that we were in. Like we had no business doing that. And yet we did it anyway. So for me, it was through those explorations of plant medicines, ayahuasca in particular with indigenous healers, and my study of Ayurveda. And those things had such a deep passion for understanding what was really happening. Because ayahuasca, I think, for some people that hear about it, right, it's psychedelic, you see visions, you vomit, right? And it supposedly helps you heal. Okay, but that's kind of like the limitation, or that's the baseline of what most people think about it. Some people think it's bad because of that, right? But through my experience with it, I started to understand a little bit deeper about what it was, right? Like there's something more profound happening here, and beyond the substance itself, which is remarkable because it requires two plants that have to come together in order to make this thing. But it's the wisdom associated with it. How was it that humans could figure this out? That you can take these two plants from the jungle, combine them in a certain way, produce this effect, and then learn to work with it, right? And so through sitting with enough ayahuasca ceremonies and with some of the healers and watching what they're doing, seeing how they're using, sound and music, seeing how they're using different energies, how they're manipulating, controlling different energies to elicit an experience, to work through some of the things that these are healers. They're actually working through traumas, ancestral traumas, cultural traumas, all these distortions that we've picked up along the way, doubts and disbeliefs and these ideas that we have adopted, all this stuff. How is it that they're able to work through somebody on these things that somebody's dealing with in the way that they're doing? Because they're not using psychology. It's not cognitive behavioral therapy. They're not talking with them. They're using chants. They're using various techniques, using various nature-based tools. They're using awareness. So as I started to explore that, I said, wow, this is worth exploring in a deeper way. And there's some things out there, Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia. There's some like psychedelic type documentaries and other projects out there that were starting to gain some traction. So I knew this was an idea that people were interested in. But for me, I wanted to, I think as we were talking and trying to figure out what we wanted to do here, we knew there was something there that we could experience, because obviously you had your experience with ayahuasca and other things, and started to realize, yeah, this is wild stuff. So for me, it was like, okay, we have the Western view of what health is and practitioners. I want to explore the indigenous ideas. What is health? What is disease? What is life? What is death? How do we think about these things? When take something like ayahuasca, and there's other things like Wachuma or San Pedro, right? When these shaman, these healers are working with these medicines, what are they doing? What's actually being healed? Is something being healed? What is healing? What is healing in and of itself? And so I wanted to learn and expose sort of the audience to these concepts and ideas. So the simple idea was to kind of do like a Parts Unknown, Anthony Bourdain, Parts Unknown, go to different cultures and just ask these basic questions, take people through an experiential journey about, what is Ayurveda? How do they think about health and life and death and sickness and disease and all these things? How do the Maori in New Zealand think about these things? How do the indigenous healers in Peru and the mountainous traditions of Peru think about these things? What about the jungles of Colombia, right?
So the ones that he's listing here, we actually did go and visit a few.
Yeah, we were in
these.
India. We were and in Nepal, right? Like the Buddhist and Bon healers.
Yeah.
So Bon is a tradition that's it's kind of pre-Buddhist. It's the indigenous healing, shamanistic kind of methods of healing in Nepal and that region. So for me, it was like, okay, well, there's regions all around the world, right? In Mongolia, in Russia, like everywhere you go, there's going to be ancient wisdom. And so for me, I wanted to explore the intricacies of these individual cultures and their ancient wisdoms and traditions. But also, what is the thread? What's the common thread that weaves through all of these? Right? In Hawaii, you have the kahunas. You have these people that are really powerful healers. In North America, we have Native American traditions, a variety of them. Right? So when we talk about a sweat lodge, well, what is their? Sweat lodge is not the same as an infrared sauna. It's not like you just go in there and sweat. There's something deeper. What's happening there? What's the tradition? What are we working with? So to me, that's what I thought was really interesting and fascinating. And unfortunately, COVID happened and the world shut down and we couldn't travel to New Zealand. But this is the cool part, right? When we were actively planning our trip to New Zealand to work with the Maori, and we had a contact with a gal. I think it's Maori Healers was the group. And she needed to get approval from the elders for us to come and film and do this whole project. And she was excited. She wanted us to come. And the elders said no. Mm-hmm. And we were so disappointed. We couldn't believe it. We're like, everything's been happening as we expected. Like, what the hell? And then I think it was like 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, the news of COVID became a big thing. Yeah. And so my interpretation is that they were reading the tea leaves, so to speak. They were reading the energies. They understood that like if we couldn't go there, we'd get stuck. The travel wouldn't have worked. Yeah. So in other words, they weren't saying no, we don't want them. They were saying no, it's not the right time. This isn't going to work.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way.
But it was literally that timing.
It was like I think if COVID was March 21st or whatever it was, I believe that's I don't think we had booked our travel yet. No, but those were that was the window.
We had it. Yeah, we had it marked on our calendars of when we wanted to go.
Yeah, that's insane. But we did go to a few places. We went to Peru. We went to Nepal. We went to India, and it's just interesting to hear these shamans and Wachuma and ayahuasca. But then you have Dr. Vasant Lad, and you mentioned earlier about I want to thread the needle between So we went to Nepal. Yep. We went to Peru, very different. And then India with Dr. Lad, also very different. How would you say that, where would you say the thread is with those three?
I think, what I expected, and it was kind of what we ended up finding, but there was nuance with all this stuff, right? Yeah. And so the expected thread that we ended up finding out to be true was that there's a deeper spiritual context to all this stuff. There is something beyond just this physical body. So in the West, we often think of mental, physical, emotional, right? And we can work on those three layers. Like if you talk to integrative health practitioners, naturopathic doctors, functional medicine people, a lot of them will kind of live in those three worlds because that's what science has shown us. So we're very scientifically driven, right? So how do we address mental health? There's a variety of ways that one might do that. How do you address emotional health? The variety of ways. Physical health, same thing. But what gets forgotten about from most practitioners is the spiritual component, because we don't know how to measure that. We don't have science that can really help us understand that. So this is what these indigenous cultures, that's kind of their baseline. It's like it's all spiritual. And it sure, there's physical reality, but they have a map for how they understand these things. And they do not forget about the spiritual component. In fact, that's the basis for how they work. That may involve physical healing and they have tools for all of these things. But what are the ways that they get to that spiritual component of health? Because a lot of this stuff, and when I say spiritual, what I mean is beyond what we can see and smell and taste and feel, even in our body, perhaps. Although we can feel quite a bit through our body, especially with enough practices, it all comes through the body. But some of this stuff is through the lineage, right? So it's beyond genetics. It's through the lineage. Some of it is ancestral and cultural. So in other words, if I'm born in a specific land, then there are energies, there are traumas, there are things that have yet to be processed in this area that we are necessarily going to take on if I'm birthed in this area or if I live in this area, both physically and culturally, right? So culturally, like if we think of a culture like Japan, they're going to have cultural stuff that they need to work through that is like specifically related to the Japanese culture, right? American culture, we have specific things that we have yet to work through based off of our history and the things that have gone on here. So there's cultural stuff, there's ancestral stuff, there's my own personal karmic stuff, right? So that's what I thought was fascinating, was how do they think about these things? How do they address these things? How do they identify these things as a practitioner? Because I think in some of these traditions, the spiritual traditions, you can go inward, you can do various techniques to start to get a sense for yourself of what's there and how to work with it. But how do I, as a practitioner, go into your experience as John and say, like, I can track these things karmically, ancestrally, and I can help you resolve them. Like, that's fascinating to me. And that's what all of them had an understanding of in their own ways. They knew that was a component, and they used different tools and techniques and these type of things. But they also had this understanding that there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
There's just things that are stuck. There's things that have not been processed. There's just part of your experience that are necessary in this life. And so there's an understanding of how to work with that stuff.
Yeah. I know one of our favorite guys that you and I share was Puma Freddy.
It was the best.
I forget his last name. Do you remember his last name?
Puma Freddy Kisby.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
And folks may have seen him. He was in, I think, The Reality of Truth, that documentary, and I think he was in another one. But we knew him before he was famous. But he's down in Peru and just took really good care of us for 2 weeks, and it was just the nicest, sweetest human I've ever met, but powerful as shit. Like,
yeah, and young, right? Like, that was what's
yeah.
fascinating. He was like our age.
Yeah.
Right. But he was clearly like a wisdom keeper.
Yeah. Like, what was your experience with Puma? What was that like?
I could tell that it was funny. There was an element of, I could sense his, he was a little green. Like, he was still a little wet behind the ears. And I mean that sort of lovingly, because he had so much more. He had a lot of wisdom, and he had been working as a healer for since he was young. And yet there was a piece of like, there was an element of like, I could see that he's still young. Because some of these healers that are older, like take Dr. Vasant Lad, who's in his 70s or whatever. It's like, you can feel the depth of wisdom. Like, he's not green. He's not, he's really, really under, and I could feel a little bit of that with Puma. But when he gets older, as he gets older, I mean, my gosh, he's just going to be unbelievable. But Puma had this soft quality, very watery, soft. Like, he was just, like a lot of people in that region, to be honest. Like, a lot of kind of earthy, soft, just this like gooey chocolate kind of energy. Like, he was warm, funny, very chill, very relaxed.
Yeah.
Just jovial.
And he's also like organized. And like, I mean, we had a very complicated schedule, and he was just, we were on time.
Yeah. I think because he works with a lot of people, like internationally, works with a lot of foreigners. He does a lot with, American media or European media. So I think he has, like, he is what, there are some of these people in that world that have, I think, are here on this planet to bridge the condor and the eagle, to help, bridge this gap between the Western industrialized world and the heart-based South American indigenous world. And we need these bridges. And he's definitely one of those guys. He speaks good English. He understands our culture to some degree and worked with a lot of people, so that just makes it so much easier, because there's amazing healers, in the jungles of in South America. But if they don't speak English and they don't understand the culture, then it can just be very messy, because there's just a miss there.
Yeah. One of my most underrated parts of Puma is we were maybe on day 10 or something, and I was just blown away the whole time. And we were in transit, we were going up to the mountains, and we were on like this, in this van, and you and I are just kicked back, and Puma's in front of us. He's watching a movie on his phone. I like peek over. I was like, what movie is Puma watching? It's 8 Mile.
8 Mile.
I don't know why. I just thought that was the funniest thing.
Because it was the opposite of whatever you would expect him to watch. Because he's so soft and gentle and relaxed and carefree, and yet he's watching this is a completely contradictory movie.
Yeah, I wonder what movie I'd expect him to be watching. I can't even think. But yeah, that was like a highlight of the whole trip.
He was great. I miss Puma.
So if we were to, so we're about, according to our original plan and outline, we're about halfway through production. We've had to halt for a few years. If we were to maybe hit 2 or 3 more locations, where do you think those would be?
I think New Zealand's a no-brainer. Like the Maori are some fascinating people. They have some amazing healing tools, as far as I understand. And because so what I love is these disparate cultures, right? Like, India is so different, so distinctly different than Peru, right? In terms of what they do and how they work, right? With Puma, we were doing egg healing, and, he's using condor and chants and, various things like that, right? Along with ayahuasca and wachuma and some of these other nature-based tools. In India and Ayurveda, they don't use any of those, psychoactive substances, and they're using totally different philosophy, but addressing some of the same things. The Maori, right? Totally different, right? So to me, I really love the contrasting nature of some of these cultures, because a lot of them, especially when you get into Asia and in India, they can kind of blend and become very similar, right? Even though they're still a little bit distinct. So I really love the contrasting nature. I'd love, if it were up to me, Hawaii would be amazing. I'd really love to work with the Kahunas and understand their traditions and history. I think they're quite protective.
Are there,
especially with white people, which is to be understood.
Are there similarities between the Kahuna?
That's a good question. I would imagine there may be some, because they're both kind of Pacific Islander, aspects, but I bet you they're very different. At the same time. That's the thing. Like, how far did these histories go back? It's hard to say, right? Some of the stories that Puma was telling us, right? The 7 race children, and he was telling us the histories from his culture thousands of years ago, and star beings and all this stuff, right? And so that's the stuff I love. I love to hear about what is their cultural story, right? How did they come to work with eggs and do egg healing and work with ayahuasca, work with wachuma? What is the story of wachuma, of San Pedro? How far back does this go? Right? India, same thing. It's like, you can go back a long way. And so for me, it's like, it's the stories, it's the history, to get a sense for what's driving their culture and their healing modalities and the way they think about stuff. And so we just, I think we're devoid of that in the West, right? Especially our European culture. We're kind of missing a lot of, there's big gaps in our understanding, even though we've got some of it in the Norse mythology, and we've got some in Irish, and there's Germanic, there's some things there, but we're missing a lot. Yeah. So to me, I'm so fascinated by the ancient cultures. What
are the chances that the project's going to get legs and we're going to be able to finish it off? I know you got a kid now, man, and all the things. And
I'd have to ask you.
I think I'd be down. I think
I would too.
It's
just a matter of figuring out how. I think the one thing that we still got to figure out is, what is it? We got some good footage. Like, how do we pull it together as a film, and what does that look like? And again, for me, it's always that distribution thing that's kind of a hang up, right? Because it's an expense, right? If we're going to fly to New Zealand and film for 10 or 14 days, I'm not as spry as I used to be. I can't. I've been giving the cameras to these young bucks. Yeah, it's going to put you on first class these days.
Man.
So that's just it, right? Like the amount of effort and and expense it would take. And then great, you got the footage, but now you got to do something with it. Right.
It's a whole thing.
So I think with enough, we could do it. We just have to sit down and like really put pen to paper and get a vision for this thing and how to execute.
Yeah. And it's funny.
The distribution.
Yeah. And it's funny. Like it's not like it has to either end up on the big screen or bust with all these social platforms now and YouTube. Like there's plenty of things we can do with it.
The thing that comes up for me is like, you know, we put so much into it. It has so much deep meaning for me. That I would hate to waste it. Yeah. To waste the production. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'd hate to like continue with it, film more, produce it, and then not distribute it well so that it doesn't get seen. It doesn't make any money. There's like, it just kind of like is out there. That's the block for me. Yeah.
I think maybe we'll figure something out. I don't know. I think it's still,
I hope so.
I think it's still alive, and it's almost like it's recently alive in me.
Well, I mean, it's also, you know, it ain't going anywhere.
Not going anywhere, not expired.
We're looking at things from thousands of years ago. It's not like there's an expiration on this stuff.
That's true. Yeah.
You and I get older, that's about it. But there's definitely a hunger for this type of content, I think. Yeah. And it's one of the things that I see lacking. You know, there's a lot of, you could say, psychedelic use in the health world now, right? I mean, we have ketamine therapy, we've got MDMA therapy, there's psilocybin therapy. A lot more people experimenting with these things kind of on their own or leaving the States. So that's out there. But I think what I see missing, not completely, but I think we could use a lot more of is an indigenous lens through which to view these things. Yeah. Right. So, you know, it's not just like you take these psychoactive substances in a sterile office and you talk with a therapist. That's fine. And it may be valuable, but there's deeper kind of things that we can share. Yeah. Both from our, you know, the research perspective and the practical perspective.
Yeah. Where are you at with your like psychedelic plant medicine journey? Are you on some sort of like schedule? Once a year I'm doing this, or is it just when it comes up?
It's kind of when it comes up. Yeah. I mean, there was for a while there, right? We were pretty active. I mean, it was probably drank ayahuasca, I don't know, 25 times in a 2 or 3 year span, something like that. Yeah. And only because it presented itself and it was readily available and it felt right. Yeah. So it would have been actively denying it otherwise, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so I just kind of went with it. And then it just dropped off for a number of years. So I think I've only drank ayahuasca maybe 4 times in the past 5 years, something like that. So ironically, it's been calling recently. And so I've been feeling the call. And what I mean by that is that I got the sense I'm being drawn. Like I feel like I want to sit with it, and I feel a longing for it. Not like I miss it, but like something is like important to actually do it. Yeah. And so I'll actually be drinking here in a couple of days this weekend. So I'm excited. Yeah. Yeah. It's been. I feel like it's been a while. There's definitely some things coming up in my reality that I think that I'll benefit from working through, getting some clarity around. There's some stuck energies, and I'm doing other things too, right? I'm doing various, you could say, therapies or sessions with people to help continue to move things as things kind of come up. But this feels like there's something there that ayahuasca in particular is going to help reveal.
Do you feel like for your ayahuasca journeys, do you feel like, obviously like setting is important for all the things, but is there like a specific setting that you actually prefer? And maybe a certain setting will generate some sort of other outcome, or?
No, I mean, not necessarily. For me, I think the most important thing that for me is, do I feel called? Right? Am I actually being drawn? Is the timing right? Right? Because you can force everything, right? But the timing and being in alignment with the sort of natural, with what's in my best interest is really important. So is the timing right? Does it feel like a good time? So that's number one. And then number two is, do I trust the person serving the medicine? And what I mean by that is, there's danger in everything, right? So I think how people assess things like ayahuasca in terms of their risk is very fascinating. Because, for example, if I were to say, you know, be careful driving home today after we record this, just be careful. It's dangerous driving a car is very dangerous. You can die. X amount of people die every year. I can give you all the stats, and I can make driving sound extremely dangerous. It kills more people than right? And yet, every single one of us drives around like it's no big deal. We don't even think about the dangers. We might put on a seatbelt. We take all the precautions, but we don't get in the car thinking, okay, I hope I make it home. This is going to be a dangerous one, right? We don't think about that. And yet with something like ayahuasca, I think because it's a little foreign, because we don't quite understand it, we can have that perception of either it's not dangerous at all, or, oh my gosh, I know somebody, I heard a story about blah, 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 right? So the risk profile is fascinating. So it's not necessarily about, is this dangerous because I'm going to, get locked into a psychotic state, or I'm going to be so tripped out that I'm going to cause harm to myself. It's not that kind of a danger. The risk, in my view, is that you're going to create a more challenging process for yourself. So whatever you're going through, whatever things that you need to work through, whatever blocks that you have, from childhood trauma to karmic to whatever you might be going through, there's a process to move through that. So is this process, is it going to be more difficult? If I go drink ayahuasca, is that process going to be more difficult? And the answer can be yes. So this is the risk when you sit with somebody with ayahuasca that is not very experienced. They may have been serving for 10 years, 20 years, but if they didn't learn from a lineage, if they don't have utmost integrity, like there's so much nuance because you're opening up somebody's field in a huge way. And so when I drink ayahuasca, I'm entering the field of, like you could say ayahuasca in general. There's a field, there's an energetic field, but I'm also entering the field of this person that I'm sitting with and the lineage that they are bringing to the table and their karmas so there's a relationship that's happening with me, with the plant, me with myself, me with this person that's serving. So to me, it's really important. Yeah. That aspect. And you may not have a sense for, you don't have a resume for this person, right? I don't know their history, but I can feel into it. Mm-hmm. And so to me, I'm feeling into it. Now I might be wrong, but to me, I want to get a sense for that person. So is the timing right? Is this person right? Right? And how when I feel them, do they feel like have good integrity? They're capable. And again, with a good practitioner, there's an aspect of there's protection that they can provide. It's like a good parent, right? A parent provides protection for the little one. They also provide proper guidance.
Yeah.
And every parent is flawed. We all make mistakes. And yet we can be skilled at it. And you can get better at it by practicing, by taking it seriously, by, like all this nuance. So there's inherent skill. Same thing with playing a piano. 10 people learn to play the piano at the same time. There's going to be some people that are just better. They sit down for the first time and they're already better than the other people the first time, and then they get better. So there's capability, there's nuance. So they're actually doing stuff. They're not just giving you the ayahuasca and making sure you don't kill yourself. Like that's not what they're doing. They're actively participating in the process. So are they capable of providing protection so that you're not opened up to other things? Because there are lots of other energies that can come into play and really make your process difficult, not just in the ceremony, but for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
So that's all there. And so to me, it's like really feeling into that. And again, I don't have the resume, but can I feel like they are capable, and do I want to sit with this person? So timing, is the person right? And then I would say the setting can be interesting, right? So I have yet to go in the jungle. I mean, we drank ayahuasca with Puma in the mountains of Peru, but I haven't been in like jungle vibes in indigenous. So I'm curious what that would bring up, because I do feel like that would be interesting. But at the same time, with ayahuasca, with other modes of healing, if there's been a lot of healing done, like we're in a podcast studio here, there's a certain field that's been created here in this podcast field studio. It's a podcast field, you could say. So same thing with ayahuasca. It's like there's a deep energetic field that's been created. And so this is what the indigenous people knew. They knew to place their maloka, their healing in certain spots, geographically, based off of the energies of the area and which way they face and all these things. So, but if there's a lot of healing that's being done, that gets kind of gridded into the space. So there's certain magic that you can experience when you go to some of these places that have experienced healing for 20, 50, 100, thousands of years, whatever the case might be, you can tap into that.
Yeah. And I think that's great insight as these things become more available and legalized, especially the who's hosting or serving you the medicine. I think anybody that's listening that is maybe entering this world, like that is a very, very, very important thing. And
it's a big responsibility.
It's a huge responsibility. And, you know, like as these things get legal, people are going to be like, well, I want to be this shaman in this powerful place.
It's like tempting, right?
It's coming. Like this is just, it could be any modality, anything. These folks will just emerge in these places. So just like really, really tune in. And
this is why, in my opinion, drinking with somebody that comes from a lineage is really important. Because when you speak about an indigenous lineage, this is a long line of people that have been serving and teaching this to people, right? And so what you're gaining is the knowledge and wisdom. It's like, I come from a long line of welders. Well, that knowledge has been passed down of welding, all the mistakes that have been made, all the realizations, that gets passed down, but it's even more amplified in something like ayahuasca. There's a lot to learn and there's a lot of energetic qualities that happen as well. So through that lineage, it's a living lineage. You have all these lessons to get passed down. And one of the things that I think is pretty common to expect, that as you get to a certain level of, let's say, practice with ayahuasca, you sat with it enough, you're starting to feel like, hey, this could be, I kind of want to do this. This like feels good. And let's say you've drank 100 times. So you feel like you're capable. I know this medicine. I know how to work with it. Like I have a relationship with it. You start to develop this, and this is real, but you can get confident in your abilities that are not there yet. And so, you know, a lot of the people that I know from indigenous lineages, they're drinking with their teacher. Same thing in the Asian traditions of, you know, martial arts, of, you know, spiritual traditions. Mm-hmm. People are sitting with their teachers for decades in order to become the teacher. Mm-hmm. You cannot skip that process. And in many of these cultures, including some of the ayahuasca cultures, you must be granted permission to now do this, because otherwise they know when you're not ready. Yeah. And by not ready, meaning you lack the capability to do certain things. It's kind of like a carpenter, right? There's a certain level of capability that a carpenter has or a contractor might have. So it's like, how good are you? But also, how much can you keep people sort of safe from experiencing these negative things that can happen energetically? Like, I'm not talking about dangers in the ceremony. I'm talking about deeper things that can make some of these processes more difficult.
Man, we could talk about ceremony and ayahuasca and plant
medicine.
There's so much to it. We'll maybe do a future one, but I need to get you out of here. I did have one other question that I was thinking about earlier today. So we started talking earlier about you being the weird guy, trying the health things, and like, I don't even like, there's always that term biohacker, which I'm not saying you are, but like just these things. So what have you seen in that world of, like, you know, 15 years ago when you're like, well, I'm going to try this red light therapy, and like, what's been your evolution? Like, what's bullshit? What have you been doing for these 15 years that you really feel is important? Just these kind of like off biohacky type things. Like what really works and what doesn't?
It's a good question. I mean, there's a lot that does work. I would say it's given the context. Yeah. Like that's always the challenge. Mm-hmm. For me, the way I like to navigate this type of world, because it's only gonna intensify, right? Yeah. Is that where I think where we're really going with all of this is that the key solutions going forward are going to be light, sound, magnetics, electricity. Like, that's going to be the core of the technological push in health. There's so much there that we have yet to like dial in and uncover. And our technology, so this is the thing about the West, we are masters of technology. Yeah. We have, like, for good and for bad, like it's a double-edged sword, no question. But because we've progressed, we put so much of our life force energy into technology, into developing technology. We're lacking in many ways of our sort of, let's say, spiritual technologies, right? Which is where South America, India, a lot of these cultures can help us, is in that sort of spiritual technology. But in our sort of artificial technologies, we've put a lot of energy into that. And so we're going to develop, and things have already been developed, but really precise ways to use light, electricity, magnetics, sound. Sound is really awesome, right? So sound and light are really cool. So to me, that's where things are going to continue to go, is using these type of things in a really fascinating way. But the way I like to think about biohacking is really from a nature first perspective. So what does the natural world do? What do we know about the natural world, and how can we use that as a template to guide us in these processes? You know, you got like Elon Musk doing Neuralink and these type of things, and we're going to have nanobots, and like that's a world I'm not too excited about. I think there's some interesting things there. I think it'll ultimately there'll be some benefits, but in kind of more of the biohacking world, I think the consumer facing side, it's stuff that comes from nature. It's the sound and the light and intricate ways to use that. Again, magnetism, electricity. How do we use these things in a really, really precise way to influence our health? So it's that side, and then it's the regenerative medicine side, stem cells and biologics. So those two are what I'm super, super excited about. You know, there's a lot of gimmicky stuff out there in the biohacking world. It's not that it doesn't work. It just has such a minor impact, where I feel like there's some people that just get so inundated with the technology, when instead they'd benefit more from breath work, from meditation,
a walk in the woods,
from Qigong, from contemplation, from turning things off, right? And just going silent, from connection, from doing trauma work, right? Learning how to calm their nervous system. Like, these are the things that I think are fascinating. In fact, I mean, we just opened a place here locally, Sarasat, that does this, that really helps the brain come back into balance. And so to me, it's like, what are the biggest levers that we can pull? And how do we use nature as a guide, instead of doing these more kind of half, robot type things, right? Like, I'm not as excited about that stuff. I think this technocratic world that we're walking into is full of dangers and threats. And it's just not a world that I'm super excited about. There can be, again, necessary benefits, no question. Like, there's going to be some cool things that happen, but people have got to be really careful about how we enter that world.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was, when we were hanging out like 15 years ago, you had all the things, and I was just like, oh, what's this little gadget? What's this device? Oh, this is going to up this 25%. And so I was like all about it. Oh, I'll shortcut anything. But now it's like, when I see those biohackers and stuff, that looks exhausting to me.
100%.
It's just like
Brian Johnson, right? He's like the classic example now. Right. He's spending millions of dollars a year studying his body and doing all these things. And I think it's great. Like, I think they're going to learn some things that can benefit people, but that level of existence just feels completely ridiculous to me. I mean, again, going back to light, like we have different, like, red light therapy is fantastic, right? There's certain frequencies of red light that have been shown to have amazing effects on a variety of things in the body. And we could just go on the sun. The sun has plenty of red light, right? Especially, from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., right? Or early morning. So this is the thing. Like, if it's pulling us away from nature, we got to be careful. Certainly they have their place, but a lot of this is to counteract the fact that we are not living like we used to be, right? Cold plunge is a perfect example. Cold plunges are fantastic. This is what people have been doing in Sweden and Finland and Russia and forever. And they would just jump in the cold waters and then they'd sit in their saunas, right? So again, even saunas were a way to counteract, because they didn't have that warmth and that natural, right? Unless they built a sweat lodge or a fire or something. So they created that. So you can do that to offset your environment, right? And because our environment in the West has now become so indoors, we're having to kind of create these things to offset our, 70-degree temperatures, artificial lighting. So to me, it's a balance. But for most people, I think they'd benefit from just go and take a walk on the beach, go swim in the ocean. Yeah, I was just go in a forest.
Yeah, I was just telling you, I'm from the forest.
You're from the forest.
The forest. And I went out a couple months ago and just like unplugged. And I tried my best to stay up on the saunas and these things. And I wouldn't say
float tanks, right? Like, there's all this like interesting, cool stuff, right?
But for me, when I do them, I'm like, oh, this is nice. But then it fades.
Yep.
But when I was out in the forest
That's
and I was like not all the way unplugged. It was just like a nice balance of unplug. I'm going to like do a little work in the morning. And then I spent hours and hours outside in the forest, and it was snowy and I was cold and I was bundled. I was next to the river. And I was telling you the other day, like I came back, my vision was just sharp. I felt fresh. I felt rested. I felt so good.
Yep.
And everyone's different, but for me, it's the removal of all those things.
100%.
All the inputs.
Well, this was the biggest one from the Human Longevity Project. The biggest takeaway that I eventually had that I didn't necessarily expect. You know, when people would often ask me, what's the one thing? If you can name one thing, right? Oh, yeah. And the answer is simplicity.
Yeah.
So simplify your life. Get rid of your deodorants, get rid of your shampoos, get rid of your soaps, get rid of your makeups, get rid of all the crap that we buy, right? And it sounds like, well, how could I live like that? But you can. And so it's like simplify when your phone, get rid of the notifications.
Yeah.
Like don't have the badges come up that say 23, like you notifying you have all this work that you got to, check up on. Get rid of, like simplify everything in your life. Simplify your calendar, simplify the food that you're eating. Instead of eating the organic apple chips, just get an organic apple.
Yeah.
Right. So all the clutter, all the extra stuff that we have, this is what's so wild. It's just baked into who we are in the West, into our culture. Is like, you got to have this, you got to have one more thing. Mm-hmm. You got to have one more device. You got to have one more tool. You got to have one more cleaning product. You got to have one more different variation of this XYZ. It's like we just accumulate so much crap, and this weighs us down mentally, emotionally, all the chemicals, all the stuff that's not from nature. Yeah. Right. So like this is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Even exercise. We overcomplicate exercise. Go for a walk outside.
Yeah. Start there.
Like go out into a forest.
Yeah.
Go lay on a beach.
Yeah.
Like simplify everything. And like that is to me the number one takeaway from the Human Longevity Project. And it's what I'm continuing to try to implement more in my life.
Totally.
How do I simplify?
And like, I don't want to sound like a downer or anything, because I feel like I'm a simplified guy. And if I'm not living a simple life, I'm grumpy and stuff, but I am so tempted all day of the bright and shiny object. It's a daily fight. So if I'm someone who's simple naturally, I can't, like, are we just fucked? Like,
it's a good question.
You know what I mean?
I mean, it's definitely something that, again, I go back to the lesson that I took from Costa Rica, which is that you're sort of a product of your environment. Uh-huh. So where are you living, right? If we were living in rural Nebraska, may not be as tempted, right? If we were living in Bali, right? Or rural Costa Rica, I mean, every time I go to Costa Rica and I'm down there for kind of just for living and getting away, I don't need as much. I wear basically swim trunks, flip-flops, sometimes a tank top. I drink water and like, I don't need anything. You know what I mean? So what's your environment like? And how does that foster these habits? A lot of times these are just habits. They're cultural habits. They're daily habits. And so changing those habits is very difficult. And yet you go somewhere else, go to Hawaii, and all of a sudden your day just looks like swim trunks and flip-flops and, some very simple foods, right? So it's a big part of it. And I think, in the West, we've created this environment of constantly needing more. I mean, there's a deeper energetic quality to this, which is that we're unfulfilled, that we're, we can't sit still. We're isolated. Right. We're always driving for more. Yeah. Right.
Competition.
In a way, it's a sickness, right? Yeah. Like we're really distorted in that way.
Yeah.
And so there's a fine line between kind of following your passion and pursuit and being driven and that type of thing, which is fantastic. And then just chasing.
Earlier, you were talking about like when I asked, well, what are the biohacking things coming up? You're like the light and the sound and these sort of things. What at Saraset? Is it sound that's involved? Is it light? Like what are you implementing at Saraset? Like what's the process like there?
I mean, it's pretty fascinating. I'd never heard of this until recently and saw one of our good friends just kind of a complete health recovery from this thing. And it's pretty simple. It's sort of like neurofeedback. It's a form of neurofeedback, a more advanced form of neurofeedback where, we take EEG sensors and read the electrical activity of the brain. and in real time feed that information back to the brain via earbuds. So somebody just has earbuds in and they hear ding dong dong, ding dong ding, and they're just hearing these tones, and the tones are representative of the brain's activity. So in other words, the tones aren't the magic. Like it's not special frequencies. There's nothing crazy happening here. This is simply a reflection of the brain's activity. So the brain's actually seeing what it's doing. So by the brain seeing its own activity, it can tell it's out of balance. It can tell that it's what's required to get back into balance, to get back into rest. So somebody sits in a chair, they're lying back and they're very calm. And theoretically, their brain should be relaxed, should be calm. But when we look at the EEGs, moment by moment, we see that they're not relaxed. Their brain cannot relax. And this is pretty much all of us. Every single person that gets in that chair, we see some level of inability to relax, inability to find balance at the neurological level. And this is because of all the things that we've dealt with in our life. Childhood traumas, the stresses at work, financial insecurity, abuse, neglect, politics, work, relationships, illnesses. All of these things create a level of stress that the nervous system must accommodate. So we get conditioned to these levels of stress. So the brain creates these neural pathways, right? What fires together, wires together. So these, over the decades that we've been alive, and perhaps due to certain instances of, could be even head injuries, PTSD, whatever you've gone through in life, create a level of physical, mental, emotional stress for somebody. Their neurological system must wire to deal with that. And then it gets used to that. It gets conditioned for that. So you imagine somebody that works on Wall Street, right? Very high-paced, high-stress job, nonstop. Their neurology is going to wire to be able to deal with that. Versus somebody working on a farm that's going at the pace of nature. It's a different neurology that's required to deal with that. So the conditioning that's happening is really what we see in the EEGs. We're seeing a stuckness. The brain's unable to go back to relaxation. And so when the brain's able to see itself, then it can actually, through the intelligence and the wisdom of the brain and the body system, it's able to sort of untangle. It's able to go back to balance eventually. So it's kind of like if you're walking on a balance beam and you're a novice, you and I, and you're going like this, you're naturally feeling that you're out of balance. It's that immediate feedback that allows us to adjust our body to find balance temporarily before we're imbalanced again, right? But if you look at a professional gymnast, Olympic gymnast, and walk on a balance beam, no problem. They know balance. So that's what we're talking about. The brain we're talking about a novice, imbalanced brain, struggling to find out balance, and it's dynamically adjusting to try to figure it out. So at Cereset, what we do is we're showing the brain what it's doing so that it can get that feedback and understand where balance is. And it's different than neurofeedback, because neurofeedback is like traditional neurofeedback. You're looking at a screen, you're participating. There's an active conscious participation that's required, which inherently is opposed to what we're wanting to achieve, which is ultimate relaxation. Right? So that's what makes Cereset so like more effective, is that people can lay back, eyes closed, they can fall asleep. We want passive participation, not active participation. And so it's been unbelievable. Like, it's a really, really effective tool.
I mean, it just seems like the potential. I mean, what potentially could get healed from that?
This is what's cool. Everything, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Because and the slogan for Cereset is, we help your brain help you, right? So when the brain is balanced, when you are in parasympathetic balance, rest, and relaxation, all your body systems will respond, right? So your ability to detoxify, your ability to digest food, your ability to make hormones, all of your body's abilities that it's trying to do these things. If you're caught, if your brain and your nervous system is caught and stuck in threat mode, in other words, you've been dealing with threats your whole life, right? Real physical threats could be mold, could be heavy metals, could be chemicals, could be traumatic brain injuries, concussions, could be emotional traumas, childhood traumas. All these threats, this constant, overstimulation, these are all what's required to deal with that is a certain level of nervous system activity, sympathetic overdrive, right? It's basically saying the world is not safe unless I stay on, right? So it gets caught on. So that's what's preventing a lot of people from healing whatever they're dealing with. They might have Hashimoto's, they might have, some other autoimmune condition, they might have cancer, they might have, inflammatory bowel disease, skin problems, joint pains, depression, anxiety, chronic fatigue, sleep issues, you name it. It can be literally anything. And if your brain is unable to get into some level of rest, of parasympathetic activity, then your ability to heal is diminished. This is where all healing takes place, is in the parasympathetic. Most of it when we're sleeping. But now imagine somebody who's not sleeping very well.
Yeah.
Because you're not sleeping very well, your ability to heal is reduced. Your ability to detoxify, your ability to clear out the brain of these, proteins that lead to Alzheimer's and dementia and Parkinson's and all these things, those get washed out at night when you in a certain level of sleep. So all of this stuff, all of our function is really dependent on how much can we deal with the world that's stressful and then come back into rest. And all of our ability, every single person's ability to get back into rest is diminished. And so this is what things like Sarah said. And look, there's other things. There's EMDR, there's family constellation, there's adult attachment repair model, there's somatic experiencing. There's all kinds of these therapies and tools that are very effective at dealing with various aspects of the brain and trauma and rewiring. And Sarasat is one of the few things that I've seen that kind of goes beyond all that directly to the tissue. Yeah. It's the brain working with the brain. There's no stories involved. There's no practices that we got to do. There's nothing that needs to happen other than the brain seeing itself and the intelligence and the wisdom of the brain reorganizing, creating new neural pathways related to rest and balance.
And it also sounds like a nice time.
It's great.
Right? Like
you sit and you lay in a chair and you just relax.
Like all these other things that you listed, those are like,
it's work.
Obviously great modalities, but it's work and it's a whole thing where that you just,
and they may be required, right? Like there is amazing work that's being done in processing a lot of these experiences that are stuck. And so that may be required as well. You may need to go detoxify too. You may need to get the mold out of your body, heavy metals out of your body. This may be a definite part of your therapeutic sort of process. And there was a lot of people that I worked with that I couldn't get to the finish line as a practitioner. Mm-hmm. And what I realize now is because of this piece, it's a stuck piece, their nervous system. We can clear the mold out of their body. So they're out of the home that's moldy, clear the mold out of their body is working, everything should be fine, but their symptoms are still present. Why? Because their brain is still stuck in threat mode. The brain has been conditioned so strongly that to deal with this threat of mold in the body, that it's stuck there. So we need to sort of like throw a wrench in that. We got to rewire that somehow. And there's other programs. There's things like dynamic neural retraining system, DNRS is a fantastic tool. But again, that requires 30 minutes, an hour every single day for months at a time. I mean, it's a fantastic solution for a lot of people that have limbic injuries and these type of things. But some people that have been dealing with chronic ailments for a long time, they're fatigued.
Yeah.
I know this from personal experience. Like you get to a point where you're just like, I just want to be normal.
Yeah.
I'm tired of doing all this shit.
Yeah.
Why can't I be normal? Like this is a very real experience. And for those who have never had chronic health issues, there gets to a point where you're just like, you're kind of done.
Yeah.
And you still got to fight a little bit, but you just want to be normal.
Yeah.
And so that's where Sarasat, it's such a great tool because you can come in and just relax.
Yeah.
And your brain is helping your brain. We're not doing anything to you. There's no frequencies. We're not doing things from an outside in perspective. It's all inside out.
Yeah. It's almost like the picture that I get in my mind. It's almost like like I'm thinking of like a NASA space launch where we're in the HQ and it's like systems on or whatever it is. They hit the button. We're ready to go. So it's like, as all these systems come online, totally. It just like can open up.
That's just it.
That's great.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's like once it's all connected.
Yeah.
And there's so much of our health is driven by our nervous system, which is part of what I even recognized with the ayahuasca work that I was doing. I even sat with a number of people in the ayahuasca world, and I realized that they can create concoctions that address the enteric nervous system. In other words, the gut nervous system. And then there's certain brews and certain energies and ways they can formulate to address the heart nervous system, right? And then the central nervous system. and then the peripheral nervous system.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that, again, that was a realization I had drinking ayahuasca enough times. It's like, oh, they can actually target different aspects of your nervous system.
Yeah, I was there,
which was blown away.
Yeah, I was there when you figured that out, and I was
wild.
like, I don't know. And you went up,
Confirmed
you're like, I'm going to go ask him. And I remember you went up and you asked him. He like looked at you like, you're not supposed to know that.
Yeah,
like,
it was.
But it's almost like you earned this.
It was like I saw through the veil.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it was very fascinating, but it was so obvious to me.
Yeah.
So okay, night one they're doing this, and okay, it's affecting. I recognized how it was affecting the peripheral nervous system. So the point there is that the nervous system is kind of this. It's almost the conduit between the unseen world and the seen world. In other words, the more etheric aspects of our being and our physical being kind of operates through the nervous system. That's oversimplified, but the nervous system is a key component to how our physical body functions. If our nervous system is not balanced, it cannot relax, then we're in trouble. We're not going to digest food. I mean, so that's the thing. Imagine you got hit in the head, your car accident, you had a concussion, significant concussion. 5-6 years later or whatever, you have this chronic health issue crop up, right? And then you look into the health issue and you realize through you working with some great practitioners, and they realize, oh yeah, it's your gut. Your gut's the source. We've got lots of inflammation going on, your gut and your immune system. So we need to treat the gut. So they treat the gut and they're helping you out and all this stuff. And then it doesn't really work. You go, okay, you go to another practitioner and they go, oh, well, actually it turns out that you've got, an abundance of XYZ chemical and even some heavy metals in your system. Oh, okay, it must be exposure to something. Well, it turns out that the head injury caused, issues with the nervous system. Nervous system prevented proper detoxification. So all the chemicals and metals that we're constantly interacting with on a just regular basis because we're living in the West and on this planet, you're unable to detoxify those for whatever reason. Maybe you have some genetic SNPs that are certain ways, but your systems are not working optimally because you got hit in the head, which affects the nervous system, affects the gut, affects your ability to detoxify. So you get all these pathways that are blocked. Now you get these things building up in your system, metals and chemicals, which further compromise the system, making you unable to detoxify. Now it screws up your hormones. You see what I mean? So it's just this, it's one thing after the next. And because it's all connected and there's feedback loops, then you start having these challenges. And then, okay, you can't eat these foods, right? You're sensitive to these foods. Well, it's all because of all the systems that have gotten jammed up along the way. But it was all because you got hit in the head and it disrupted your brain and nervous system and how it's functioning. So this is what happens in the health world. I realize it's like, it can be one event, or more often than not, it's a series of things that come together that end up overwhelming the system. And it's like dominoes. Little parts of every part of your system starts to function suboptimally. And as they function suboptimally, then it all starts to go downhill. And then one day we have an autoimmune condition or cancer or Alzheimer's or you name it. And it's like, well, what caused the Alzheimer's? Well, a series of things in your life that happened and your lack of awareness of how to not only see what was going on, but just live your daily life in an appropriate way. Maybe you're eating more carbohydrate rich processed foods. Well, was it that, or was it your system not working very well? It was both, right? So we can't blame it on the foods solely. We have to look at the circumstances. And so this was the picture that I started to recognize in the health world. It's like, oh man, there's all these things that we've got to consider. And a good practitioner will do a workup and assess, what was birth like?
Yeah.
Was there head traumas at any point in your life? At 7 years old, when you were in cheerleading camp, whatever the case was, you and I played football, right? All these little micro head traumas. What role did that play?
Yeah.
Did your jaw and your face develop properly? Because if not, then you don't have room for your tongue in your mouth, which means that your airway is choked off a little bit, which means you're not sleeping very well. And you have these slight sleep apneas and you're breathing through your mouth a little bit while you sleep. Sure, mouth tape can be helpful, but the problem is that your face has not developed optimally because of poor nutrition, lack of breastfeeding, XYZ, right? So we can have dental issues, not even dental, it's facial development issues. Your mandible and your maxilla is not developed properly. Teeth don't have enough room. Tongue doesn't have enough room. You got teeth extracted, which affects the nerve. I mean, you know what I mean? Like this stuff there's so many things that can happen and in Ayurveda, I remember reading that if you have these little indents on the side of your tongue, then that suggests that your digestion's suboptimal. Well, why? It's because your tongue doesn't fit. Your mouth is too narrow. So your tongue doesn't fit, and now it's being jammed in there. That's why you have the dents. If your jaw was bigger, your face was bigger, you had room for your tongue, then you wouldn't have the dents. You got space in your teeth. You never have to get teeth extracted. You have an optimal airway. You got good airflow through your nose. You're breathing through your nose. Your mouth closes most of the day while you sleep. Because you're breathing through your nose, you have nitric oxide getting to the tissues. Your brain functions optimally. You're sleeping better. Deep sleep causes better hormone production, better healing. You're getting good REM sleep. So now it's like, this is the reality of health. And unless you've trained or read or worked with enough people to understand how to assess these things, you end up chasing your tail and thinking you got a thyroid problem or you got an immune system problem. And the reality is you have a concussion problem, you have a facial development issue, you have a structural development issue. Your fascial system's just twisted and knotted, causing all kinds of imbalances. So, I mean, I'm making it sound overly complicated for a reason, that these are all the things that one should assess.
Yeah.
And, Ayurveda does this. Ayurveda assesses this stuff very well, from the physical to the mental, to the emotional, to the developmental, to the spiritual, right? And there's certain systems out there that really do a good job of this, but it's a very complicated thing to understand what the root of some of this stuff is. It's not as simple as I think a lot of practitioners and people out there reading blogs and social media think.
Yeah, totally. And I've been fortunate to do a lot of work with somebody that was on our movie, Datis Karazian, and I helped him with some of his case studies. And people are coming in with these complicated things, and he's just like drilling down, and he just
there it is.
That's it.
Yeah, there
it is. Okay, so that's that. Then this means this and this and this, and just I'm like in there like come on. Datis has all the Harvard certificates on the wall. Yeah. Like, are you sure? Like, even I, who kind of knows a little bit, like, I don't know, man. And then you'll see the months go by, and you can see even the patients are like, I'm very sick. It can't be this one little thing. And Datis is like, it's all these things that you're talking about. It's like, well, that's where it started, and which caused this. So in order to balance it, so you
might have to support many systems along the way, but if you don't address the core thing, right? This gets back to Saraset. There's a lot of people that have, again, the people that I worked with for years, and I couldn't get them across the finish line. Yeah. Why? It's because I didn't understand that the piece that they were missing was this piece. Yeah. Was that their brain was stuck in this sympathetic, imbalanced state for whatever reason. And physical ailments, like you can get heavy metal toxicity that creates the level of stress in the system that conditions the brain, and then the brain's imbalanced because of the metals or the mold. So that would be a sort of a secondary brain imbalance, or it could be a primary brain imbalance due to trauma, or due to physical blunt trauma, or emotional trauma, or childhood trauma, these type of things. So it's complicated in a sense, but the solution, other than kind of helping, finding a good practitioner, the solution really is to get back into nature. Yeah. Simplify. Yeah. To go back to living like somewhat how we used to live. Yeah. In the indigenous cultures, one of my favorite things that I picked up was, they call them spiritual payments, right? And like, it's an important thing to do these spiritual payments. And so one of the spiritual payments was fasting. Oh, it turns out that's like every religion has an aspect of fasting. Modern science understands fasting, so there's something special there. It's beyond just the scientific portion. There's a spiritual payment of fasting, right? Giving back to the land. In other words, being grateful for what you're given. So there's, meditation, right? Spiritual payment, gratitude practices, yoga. So I like this idea. Yeah. Spiritual payment. I'm reminding myself constantly of like, what's the spiritual payment? Like something that feeds your soul in a deep, deep way. And when you do that, when you nourish your soul and your spirit, your body, your mind, your emotions, are rewarded.
That's a great thing to keep on top of mind. Spiritual payment. Yeah.
And it also kind of implies, for me anyway, that like I kind of owe something,
Yeah.
that I'm in debt to life itself, to God, right? I'm in debt to something greater than me, that I can't take everything for granted, that I don't deserve anything or everything, that I'm forever grateful for whatever I'm given, so it's that reciprocal nature. I mean, we're given so much. So what can I give back? What can I say thank you, right? So acts of service, also another spiritual form of spiritual payment.
Yeah.
So it's a big one for me, like just keeping that in my mind. Again, it can be meditation, spiritual payment, right? Perfect. Prayer, spiritual payment, right? So what can you do today for a spiritual payment?
Yeah, man, I think that's a great place to end this. I'm sure you'll be back on every season. You'll be like an anchor of the show if you want to come back, because we have so much growth together and like starting as basically boys,
Yeah.
and now here we are,
softball teammates,
drinking beers and figuring life out together and supporting each other. So
yeah, it's been cool to see our parallel threads, and like occasionally they weave together and then they kind of go back apart. And they're, we've been side by side for a while, and sometimes they come together, and it's been pretty cool to see that unfold. And hopefully, next time I come on, hopefully we'll have something more to talk about. Hopefully we have another thing that we've done.
Well, I feel like we kind of set each other up. Now everyone's going to be wanting to know.
I know.
And,
It's expectations.
But I mean, maybe we can hold put a little pressure on ourselves to get things going again, because I know we both want to do it. So
yeah, I got to get back out there. I've been behind a computer too much. So.
Yeah. Well, maybe we combine forces one more time. We'll see what happens. But all right, Jace, thanks so much for joining us on the PCP today. That was a blast. We definitely went over, but
you knew we would.
I knew we would, and it was like very stressful to try to like limit us in any way to talk about anything. But I think that was just great. I really appreciate you taking the time, and we'll have you on next season.
Cool. Thanks, man.
All right, man. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to the PCP, and we'll see you on the next episode. Peace.